In a time before the sun and the moon, the Elves, or the Quendi, awoke at Cuivenin. The Maiar are an angelic race lesser than the gods or the Valar. At this time, Melian the Maya ventured into Middle-earth and wandered there for hundreds of years. The third kindred of the Eldar, known as the Teleri, was reaching the end of their journey to the land of the Valar, when Elwë, the High King of the Teleri, was lost in the woods of Nan Elmoth as he sought out Finwë, the High King of the Noldor, the second kindred of the Elves. As Thingol went to Nan Elmoth, he heard the singing of nightingales, and he heard the voice of Melian the Maya, and became entranced with her. Olwë took the kingship of the Teleri, and departed over the sea, and they became known as the Falmari, the Sea Elves. Elwë never went to Valinor again, but through the line of Elwë and Melian came the blood of the Maiar among the children of Iluvatar, both men and elves. Elwë became the High King of the Elves of Beleriand. These were named the Sindar, the Grey Elves, neither Elves of Light nor Elves of Darkness. Elwë was content with never returning to Valinor, as he beheld the light of Aman in the face of Melian. Elwë was renamed Thingol, King Greycloak, and the power of Thingol And Melian grew great within Beleriand under the stars. The Sindar were Quendi elves, the Elves of the Darkness. However, they became the mightiest of all the elves in Middle-earth after learning from Thingol and Melian the Maya. To Thingol and Melian was born Luthien, the most beautiful of all of the children of Iluvatar, who is one of the main figures in the most important story of the First Age. Melkor, the rebellious Vala, was imprisoned in the halls of Mandos for 3 ages, or about 3,000 solar years. During the second age of Melkor's imprisonment, the dwarves, the children of Aule and the adopted children of Iluvatar, had awoken and crossed over the Eredluin, or Blue Mountains. They met the Sindarin elves, and the Sindar named them Naugrim, the stunted people. The most ancient halls of the Naugrim existed within Eredluin. North of the great Mount Dolmed was the city of Gabalgathal, which the elves named Belagost. To the south was Tumunzahar, which the elves named Nogrod. Although the cities in the Blue Mountains were vast and glorious, the greatest dwelling of the dwarves at this time, and throughout all of the memories and histories of their people, was Khazad-dûm, Hathodrond in the Elvish language, which later was called Moria, the Black Pit. This place was a legend and a rumor to the Elves of Beleriand at this time. The elves found the language of the dwarves repulsive and rough. Few elves ever learned it. The dwarves preferred to use the elven tongue, as they held their language of Kuzdul sacred and secret, and they loved the language of the elves. The dwarves made a great road for trade from Mount Dolmed to the west. This road crossed the Gelion, and a great battle would later take place at the crossing of the Gelion at Sarn Athrad. The elves and the dwarves served one another as much as it served them, and their relationship was purely for trade and capital. Although the dwarves first became friends with the Sindar, they later became great allies with the Noldor Mor, who loved most Aule, the father of the dwarves. The main exception to this rule was Eol, the Dark Elf, the greatest friend of the dwarves among the Sindar, and one of the greatest smiths to ever live. After the long ages of peace between the Sindar and the Naugrim, within the elven kingdom of Eglador, Melian the Maya gained a supernatural revelation that Melkor's captivity had ended. Thingol sought to make himself a kingly dwelling to stand against the forces of shadow that were soon to come. Thingol sought out his friends, the dwarves of Belagost. The dwarves aided him, and Melian gave them pearls and taught them hidden knowledge of the West. The Naugrim delved Menegroth, the 1,000 caves, and Melian made great carvings and tapestries of unmatched quality that told stories of the West. The elves and dwarves together made the wonder and beauty of Valinor beyond the sea with the might and the strength of the children of Aule. The carvings of pillars looked like trees lit with golden lanterns. Nightingales sang there as in the west. There were fountains of silver, basins of marble, and carvings of birds and beasts. The dwarves became troubled after the third age of Melkor's captivity was ended. The remnants of evil were gaining boldness and issuing from the gates of old forgotten fortresses in the northern wastes.
"There are fell beasts," they said, "in the land east of the mountains, and your ancient kindred that dwell there are flying from the plains to the hills."
Fell beings of shadow haunted the land of Eriador to the east of Eredluin. Orcs made their appearance and had spread far and wide, and they eagerly awaited the return of their master Melkor, as the tyrant of Utumno, his fortress in the north. The elves thought the orcs were corrupted Avari elves, those who forsook the journey in the beginning. Their guess was not far from the truth. Thingol sought greater offensive capability, and the dwarves made for him weapons and armor after the manner of their own people, while Thingol's people added enchantments and powers to these great works of steel. Telchar the Smith was the greatest of these dwarven smiths. Among Telchar's greatest works were Angrist, the knife of Beren, Narsil, the sword of Elendil, which Aragorn reforged as Anduril, the flame of the west, and the dragon helm of Dor Lomin, worn by Turin Turambar. Telchar was one of the greatest blessings to the second-born children of Iluvatar, or the race of men, in later days. The Sindar defended their realm with ferocity, driving back all creatures of evil from their borders. During the journey of the elves to Aman, Finwë forsook the march, and he was part of the kindred that the dwarves referred to. The Nandor were his people, and they lived by the Anduin at first. Many went to Eriador. The Nandor were wood dwellers, and stealth was their greatest ally. They were afraid of the rising threat, as they had no weapons. Denethor, the son of Lenwë, learned of Menegroth and Thingol's kingdom of Eglador. They passed into Beleriand. They were welcomed by Thingol, as he had sympathy for them, as he did not make the full journey to Valinor either on his second adventure. Sindarin runes at this time were devised by Daeron The Minstrel in those days, and they were called the Cirth. King Thingol upon his throne was as the lords of the Maiar, whose power is at rest, whose joy is as an air that they breathe in all their days, whose thought flows in a tide untroubled from the heights to the deeps. At this time, Orome, the huntsman, rode in Beleriand, and Melkor's hosts fled before his horn, and at the neighing of Nahar, his white horse. Melkor slew the two trees of the Valar with the aid of the great spider Ungoliant. These two great terrors entered Middle-earth. All of the people of Beleriand fell down in terror. Ungoliant went out from the north and entered Thingol's kingdom. Melian the Maya pushed her back, but Ungoliant was forced into the highlands of Dorthonion. Her abode was after named Erith Gorgoroth, the Mountains of Terror. There life and light were strangled, and there all waters were poisoned. Melkor, now known as Morgoth, the black foe of the world, returned to his fortress of Angband in the north, where once Gorthar the Cruel, or Sauron, was lieutenant. The Fangorodrim, the Iron Mountains, were raised about 450 miles, or 724 kilometers from the bridge of Menegroth. Far, yet all too near. The previously fearful and cautious orcs grew in terror and boldness. They lusted for battle and death. Morgoth sent forth black vapors to cover their passage, and they issued from the north. A great army assailed Thingol's realm. The orcs made camps between Kelon and Gelion, and west between Sirion and Narog. Thingol was cut off from Círdan, the lord of the Falathrim, in the south. Denethor's elves came to aid him from Region and from Dofsiriand. The first battle of the Wars of Beleriand was fought under the stars, and was called the Dagor Nuin Gileath. The orcs were slaughtered north of the Andram, and between Aros and Gelion. The Naugrim slew them as they retreated. Denethor was surrounded at Amon Ereb. He was slain with his kin beside him. The Nandor mourned for the slaying of Denethor, and refused to take another king in honor of his memory. The Elves of Osiriand were ever after called the Lyquendi, the Green Elves, because of their great camouflage and tree dwellings. Thingol withdrew all of his people, and Melian fenced their kingdom with an enchanted maze of dread and confusion. This was called the Girdle of Melian. The kingdom of Eglador was ever after called Doriath, the Guarded Kingdom, or the land of the Girdle of Melian. Beyond the borders of this realm that lay in watchful peace, Morgoth's hosts roamed freely, save at the Falas, the kingdom of Círdan, in the south. After great fear, great loss, great sorrow, and great guard, Feanor and the host of the Noldor set foot upon the shores of Beleriand at the Firth of Drengist, a great hope and yet a great omen of doom upon the lands of Beleriand and her people. Hello and welcome back, Defenders of Middle-earth. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and also don't forget to subscribe to join the armies of the Free Peoples today. And don't forget to check out the lore playlist on my channel, or don't forget to check out the Silmarillion playlist for my videos on the book. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.